Please stand for the reading of the word. I am Vicki Petersheim, and I will be reading from Matthew 9:35 and 36. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered like sheep, having no shepherd. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you. Hey, good morning. Man, glad to see you this morning. Hey, listen, we're in a series called Jesus Cares, and I don't know what you're going through today, but maybe those are the two words you just need to hear today. Man, Jesus cares. You heard it last week, maybe the week before that. You're going to keep hearing that. I want to begin this morning. I want to tell you about two prayers that I prayed, and I'm going to begin with the second prayer first. All right, and this was the prayer I prayed. Lord, I don't want to talk to anybody. Now, I don't know if you ever had a prayer prayed like that. I know it doesn't sound very pastorally that a pastor would pray a prayer like that, but let me give you the context. Many of you know my son Cameron is starting a church in Nanaimo, which is on Vancouver Island. And so about 2 months ago, we pulled a 26-foot truck and his Honda CRV, and we pulled it across the country. We went on Monday from Jonesboro to Fayetteville, Arkansas, saw Hunter and Shelley Hall while we were there. We went from Fayetteville, Arkansas to Denver, Colorado, saw Hunter and Hannah Holbrook while we were there. And then we went from Colorado to outside Boise, Idaho. And then on Thursday, we drove from Boise, Idaho to Seattle. And then on Friday, we drove from Seattle onto Vancouver Island. And we did not get to his house because of customs until midnight that night. And we had to unload the truck because that's when the people could be there to unload the truck. Canadians are weird like that. I don't know why. All right. But anyway, so we didn't get through unloading the truck till about 2 a.m. We went to sleep, got up the next morning about 9 o'clock. And we are now putting beds together. We're putting furniture together. And true to Cameron, he wanted to show me the parts of the island. We go and we see parts of the island. Next thing you know, I'm sitting in an airport that's about as big as this room. I think there's one gate there. I'm not sure. It's in Nanaimo. And my heart is so full. I've just spent an incredible week with my son in the cab of a truck, 10 hours, 11 hours a day, talking, laughing, sharing, listening to podcasts. I'm seeing what the Lord's doing in his life. And then we get to Nanaimo, and I see people that God had brought. And all of a sudden, the trip is over, and I'm in this airport, and my heart, all I can think about is a lot of you, really. How many of you have at some point prayed for or touched Cameron and been a part of his life? And man, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to journal all this kind of stuff, and I can't write, I don't want to, and I've got tears coming down my face. I got a smile, and I'm sure somebody's going, keep an eye on this guy. All right, keep an eye on this guy. Something's not right. And so when I go to get on this airplane, it's a small airplane. We're going from Nanaimo to Calgary. And I look down the row, and I knew I had a window seat, but I noticed there's only 2 seats on this side and 2 seats on that side. And that's when I prayed, Lord, I'm an emotional mess. If I try to talk to anybody, I'm just going to cry. My heart's full now, and I'm just going to cry, and I don't want to cry. So, Lord, I don't want to talk to anybody. And so I sit down, and this lady sits down beside me. She sits down, and she sits down and goes, man, she goes, these seats aren't as big as they used to be, are they, eh? And slaps me in the leg. I'm like, who does this? Why are you and who says eh? Who does this, Anyway, we start going, and, we're just sitting there on the runway, we hadn't taken off yet. And the next thing I know, she's crocheting. She's like 35 or 40 years old. And all of a sudden, I'm talking to her, and I'm like, "Shut up, Scott! Shut up!" And I said, "I don't know the last time I see anybody crochet." And then she says something else, and then I say something. I'm like, "Lord, what's going on?" I'll tell you why I'm talking to her, and I'll get to the first prayer in a minute. I'm talking to her because Jesus loves people. Man, he loves people. He cares about people in all walks of life. Now, today, I don't have much time, and I'm going to move sort of fast, but we're going to talk about three different types of people. We're going to talk about the marginalized people, all right? And we're going to talk about those that are suffering. And I'll say right up front, if people that are marginalized are suffering, so there's some layover right there. And then we're going to talk about sinners, and not just sinners, but like notorious sinners. So let's begin with this. Jesus cares about marginalized people. And I want you to pay close attention to both his words and his heart and his response in here. Now, Vicki just read this. It said, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, healing every disease and sickness. And when he saw the crowds, listen, it says he had compassion on them. Now, that phrase, had compassion on them, there's about 7 times in the New Testament where it says he had compassion on them. Only 5 times does it use this particular word. And matter of fact, when the writers of this gospel here, when they used this particular word, they had to create a word because there was not a word on earth that captured what happened in Jesus' gut when he saw these people. It said he had compassion on them. It literally means he was moved in his bowels, his gut. He felt it so deep. And it says because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. As Jesus is going about, he sees the marginalized. And here's how he defines them. They're harassed and they're helpless. They're like sheep without a shepherd. You know what a sheep will do? A sheep will go missing all by itself. A sheep will get lost. A sheep, man, they get attacked. Sheep get killed. And Jesus sees this. And he looks over at the crowds, and these people are being treated the same way. You know what his response was? It was compassion. Unlike anything that had happened on earth yet, because they had to create a word for it. He has compassion on them. He is moved. He's not just sad for them. He's not just gloomy for them. And he's not just angry at the injustice. No, he has compassion. He felt it. He was moved with compassion. Well, the question now is, man, who are the sheep of our day? And so I'm going to give you some examples. This is not exhaustive by any means. Let's talk about orphans and foster kids for a moment. As of 1 week ago, October 25th, there were 11,840 kids in foster care in the state of Georgia. Now, last week I was at the South Campus, and they had a friend of mine there that runs Family to Family. That's the largest foster care agency in the state of Georgia. They turned away 2,400 kids last year because they didn't have enough foster parents for them. That's 200 kids a month. Do you know in the last 4 years, 1,790 foster kids have just gone missing from foster care? And they believe that 410 of them are now identified as being sex trafficked. Do you know that if just one family from every church in the state of Georgia fostered, we would wipe out the need for foster care in the state of Georgia? That's just orphans and foster care. Can we talk about the elderly and nursing homes? Man, how many of us have been to a nursing home to visit a loved one or somebody from the church, and man, all of a sudden you're bombarded by people literally rolling up to you in their chairs or in their wheelchairs, and they want to touch you and they want to talk to you, and if you talk to the staff, many of them have not been visited since the time they've been dropped off. And you know the damage that does to one mentally and emotionally and even physically. The average stay in a nursing home really is no more than 3 years. So some of these people have not been visited in 3 years. And let's talk about widows for a second. In our community now, biblically, the families are supposed to take care of the widows, and the church is supposed to take care of the widows. But let's talk about those outside in the community. Tracy and I were at our mechanic last week or week before last, and an elderly lady, 80-year-old lady, pulled up. And we talked to Ray later, and he said that she was told by another mechanic she needed $6,000 worth of work. She went to another place. They said, no, you don't. You need $3,600. Ray looked at it and said, you need no work. No work. But every day, man, the elderly, especially the widows, are being taken advantage of. One more example. Let's look at the disabled. Man, often they are overlooked. Man, they are ignored. Maybe they're stared at, but not spoken to. Do you know that they're taken advantage of because of their money, and because also, too, many of them have no voice? If it were not for school teachers and principals, a lot of this would go unnoticed. Do you know they want to belong, they want to be accepted, and they want to contribute? They not only need the Son of God, they need the people of God. And these are just some of the examples of the sheep of our day who are going missing, who are going lost, who are getting attacked, who are literally being killed. Now, you and I are surrounded every day by people that are harassed and helpless. And not everyone in this room can foster or adopt, but the church should be known for it. Not everyone in this room can look after the elderly or widows, but the church should be known for it. And not everyone in this room can take care of the disabled, but the church should be known for it. Because Jesus cares about the marginalized. Jesus cares about suffering people. And I'll say this again, if they're marginalized, they are suffering. Now, John the Baptist asked a pretty interesting question about Jesus. He sent his disciples to Jesus to say, hey, I hear all these reports. Ask him if he's the one to come, if he's the Messiah. Now, we know ahead of time that Jesus and John the Baptist knew each other and that he baptized Jesus. We know that. But you know what? It's amazing what suffering will cause you to do. It'll cause you to doubt, won't it? I think John the Baptist is probably just in this situation. He's in prison and he's alone and he's wondering if Jesus is who he says he is. And listen to how Jesus answers the question. Jesus replied, go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. He's basically answering him with Isaiah 35, the prophecy about the Messiah to come. Now, I have a question, though. If Jesus came to proclaim the good news, he came to forgive sin, he came to make people right with God, why would he spend his time with temporal work like healing? Every person in Scripture that was healed eventually died. But it says here that Jesus went around, man, the lame can walk, the blind can see, the deaf can hear, and he's proclaiming the good news. Now, that doesn't mean that all people will be healed in this room. But you know what? All of us can be comforted. Not everyone in this room can heal. But everyone in this room can comfort others with the same comfort we have received, like Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians. And I want to give you some examples of this. This past Sunday afternoon, I'm over here. We got a Celebrate Recovery Leaders meeting. And I walk out of the room, and there's a small group meeting in a classroom over here. And Kevin and Vicki Peterson are leading it. And it's called Divorce Care. And they've got a group of people in that room. And you know what Kevin and Vicki are doing? They're comforting those people with the same comfort they receive. Because you know what I have learned in my life on this earth? Nobody grows up hoping to get married one day so they can get a divorce. Nobody dreams about that. And I have seen and witnessed divorces in my lifetime and here at the church, and it's a tearing apart. It's one of the worst things I have ever witnessed. And what Kevin and Vicki said, you know what? Hey, I've been there. I get it. I'm going to comfort you with the same comfort that I've received. Another example. Well, every Thursday night here at Celebrate Recovery, I watch these men and women who used to struggle with alcohol addiction and drug addiction, sex addiction, food addiction, social media addiction. It is a thing, people, and you're all convicted, right? And you know who they're being served by? They're being served by people that used to struggle with the same thing. I see people being served that are being served by people that used to struggle with depression and anxiety and codependency and anger and control issues. And they're being served by people that have found healing in Christ. And man, they're comforting others with the same comfort that they have received. Let's get outside the church walls for a moment. I was having coffee with Sammy Osborne, Judge Sammy Osborne. And he's telling me about, but first of all, let me tell you this. I want you to do this for me. He was in here first service. I've been having coffee with Sammy about once a month, once every 2 months for 15 years. He's never bought my coffee one time. And I told him, he tried to say something. I said, you are guilty as charged, sir. So I want you to ask him after church when he's going to buy my coffee. But we were having coffee, and he starts telling me about resource court. And resource court is for those who have been incarcerated, but they have a mental health diagnosis. Now, let me talk about mental health for a second. All of us fall on the mental health spectrum. We're either doing really good or we're not doing well at all. We can't function. But somewhere, every single one of us falls on there. You can call it brain health. I like that too. You can call it whatever you want. But some of us, we fall somewhere here. But for those who have been arrested because of mental health issues, they created something called resource court. And I walk in there on Wednesday, and it's the most amazing thing. It's court, so I'm expecting it to be like, get better, do right, get out, and then come back next month. I'm going to tell you what, they'll call the person up there, and the lady said, Judge, I want you to hear that she's got some good news she wants to share with you. And this lady or this man shares the good news, and man, the whole courtroom just applauds, right? I'm seeing grace. I'm seeing encouragement given, right? I'm seeing that. And so I'm looking around the room. I know a couple of the people are believers in the room, one of the deputies and stuff, but then I look and there's a believer on the bench. Now, it doesn't mean they just get scot-free. So, hey, they got 2 rules. You got to show up. And I saw Sammy enforce the 2 rules. Hey, you got to show up and you got to be honest. But then there was grace given. Sammy started resource court. Now it's all over the state of Georgia, maybe in the southeast. I don't know. A believer surrounded by people that are suffering. Now he's inviting me over there so we can make connections so that hopefully one day these people can come to Christ. It's amazing outside the walls. Facebook's facility. We all know about Facebook over here on I-20. Man, they've reached out to us, and now they're wanting to start Christ-centered open share groups for their employees at the Facebook facility, led by believers in Christ. That's what, we're surrounded by opportunities to serve the suffering. We're surrounded by them. And if Jesus cares for the suffering, I'm going to say this one, I'm very specific about using this word, the church should be known for it. The church should be known for it. Now, the third group, Jesus cares about sinful people. It says while Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him as disciples. I want to stop right there. Some translation says many tax collectors and notorious sinners. But let me say this. This tax collector, most of you know this to be true. These people bidded for this. They just weren't handed this job. No, these are Jews that bidded for this position to work for the Roman government, and they had to pay a lot of money for it. So they're cheating their own brothers and sisters here of the Jewish people. And many of them, too, sold their property that God had given them so that they could afford this. So they turned their back on God and they turned their back on their brothers, and they're cheating them. And then they're having dinner with sinners. The tax collectors are worse than sinners in the Jewish people's eyes. And Jesus was having dinner with them. And when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? On hearing this, Jesus said, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. I used to pray that God would fill the church up with notorious sinners. And I would pray that he would fill Thursday nights up with notorious sinners. But that's wrong. These people were in church. These people were in the synagogue. Jesus went to where the sinners were. They were in Matthew's house. A lot of you invite people to church. Way to go. That's fantastic. But I'm going to tell you something. They'll be a lot quicker to come to your home than they will to a church. And they'll come to your house a lot quicker than they'll come here. Jesus went where they were. And I'm going to tell you something. I have found this to be true in my life. When I'm talking to somebody, it doesn't take very long for me to start telling them about Jesus. Not that I've got to have 4 points or I got to have a track or anything like that. For me to get to know somebody and talk to them, that'd be like leaving Tracy and my 6 boys out. Like 35 years of my life, I'm just going to leave that out. I've known Jesus longer than I've known Tracy. At some point, I can't help but talk about Jesus and talk about the answers to prayer, talk about what he's done for my life, the forgiveness that I've found, or talk about you and the church family that I have because of Jesus. I can't describe my life without talking about the work of the Lord. I'm on the plane with this lady, and before we take off, I think it was Angie Martin sent a picture of Tracy. She's speaking here at a ladies' conference, and she's got labels and name tags all over her. And the labels and name tags represent things that maybe we've done that are sinful or shameful, or things people have done to us, or lies we have believed about ourselves. And so I'm explaining the picture to this lady, and she asked me the question, why do we want to hide our shame? And I said, oh, that's easy. I said, you remember when God told Adam and Eve, hey, look, you can go anywhere in the garden, you can eat from anything, but don't eat from this tree, and they ate from it. What did they do? They hid. And she did this. She went, that's amazing. I said, I didn't write that. You know, that's not original with me. And then her defense went up. I don't follow any particular religion. That's fine. I mean, the truth is, I don't either. But she couldn't understand that, right? So I just kept talking. I said, you know what? I'm also part of a recovery ministry. I said, what's amazing about it, someone may walk up on stage and say, hey, I'm Fred. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus, and I struggle with sex addiction. And people go, hey. She's like, really? I said, yeah. You know why? I said, because we accept one another just as Christ Jesus accepted us. We accept one another. I wish I could tell you that lady gave her life to Christ. She didn't, but I'll tell you what she did do. She gave me her name and number so I would give it to Cameron and Krista so they could have her over in their home, and she knows that they're church planners. Isn't that amazing how God set this up? Here I am praying, God, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. And I can't stop. You and I are surrounded by opportunities to love and bear witness to the heart and work of Jesus Christ. Jesus loves sinners, and so should the church. So the question is, what's my response to this? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And this is the first and greatest commandment. And he said, and the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And I want to stop right there for a second. Love your neighbor as yourself. If I saw myself hungry, you know what I would do? I would feed me. Man, if I saw myself harassed and helpless, I would protect myself. If I saw myself being taken advantage of, I would intervene and I would stop it. If I saw myself discouraged and alone, I would stop and encourage myself. If I saw myself addicted, I would stop and get myself help. If I saw myself without a family, man, I would take myself in. If I saw myself alone and without a friend, I would befriend myself. Now, how important is this? Listen to Matthew 25. And the king says, the king will reply, and he's in the middle of a parable. He said, I'll tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They will also answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? He will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. And they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. We can't afford to be indifferent to the marginalized. And we can't afford to be indifferent to those who are suffering. We can't afford to be indifferent towards sinners. Now, for those who did nothing, man, listen to what he said. He said, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Spurgeon said this. He said, they had joined the devil in refusing allegiance to the Lord, so it was but right that imitating his rebellion, they should share his punishment. James says faith without works is what? Dead. Now, these works won't save you. Faith in Christ will save me. But these types of works are evidence of our salvation. Now, the last thing you need to do is leave here thinking, I should do something. I don't want you to leave here thinking that. When you see the marginalized and the suffering and the sinners, our attitude cannot be, I should do something. Man, compassion-based faith says, I must do something. I must do something. I cannot sit still. But where does that begin? Why would I talk to a lady on an airplane that I don't want to talk to? Because it has everything to do with the other prayer I prayed that day. The first prayer I prayed that morning before we started putting beds together and all that stuff. My Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, and your will be done. And when I get to that part, I pray your kingdom come and your will be done in this house as we're putting things together. And I say, your kingdom come and your will be done as we're walking around Nanaimo. And your kingdom come and your will be done when I'm sitting in that airport. And your kingdom come and your will be done when I'm sitting on that airplane. And your kingdom come and your will be done as I land in Atlanta. I'm praying through that day. The reason I talked to somebody I didn't want to talk to, because that morning I already made a decision I was going to do his will and not mine. These decisions are not made in the moment. No, they're made in the morning when you're praying. Man, they're made in the morning when you're submitting to He is Lord, I am not. Man, He is God. And He has complete rule of my life. But if we wait for the moment, we'll do nothing. And it begins in submissive prayer to the Lord. Doing what must be done is decided in prayer. My goal for this morning is not for you to feel pushed. No, my goal for all of us this morning is we would be like Jesus. And we would be conformed into His image. And I'm going to tell you, His word and submissive prayer conforms me into His image. And then the shaping of God's people. But it begins in prayer. So I'm going to have you stand with me. I was talking with Eric, our deputy, this morning, and we were talking about the importance of the Lord's Prayer. It's not a 7-year-old prayer. That's what Jesus taught His disciples. And I pray it in all kind of words and stuff, but man, I pray it and I mean it. And so I want to challenge you this morning. We're going to pray it together. Remember, these words mean something. His kingdom, not my kingdom. His will, not my will. We're going to trust Him. Let's pray together. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Stop right there. Your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's submission. Let's continue to go together. Give us today for our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Can you stop for a second? Is it, Lord, forgive me for being selfish? Is it, Lord, forgive me for living my own life? Lord, is it forgiving me for giving you lip service and saying you're Lord, but doing my own thing every day? Lord, is it forgive me for those things, but Lord, also forgive me as I forgive those who've sinned against me. And let's continue praying. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.